Thanks
So nice
so
to
much
meet
for,
you.
yeah, you too. You too. It's great. I'm so appreciative of your time. Thanks so much. It's um
Of
it's
course.
love it's really lovely to have the opportunity to continue the conversation about this wonderful film and this great collaboration between you all, to be honest. So, I mean, congratulations first and foremost. My God, it's a great film.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for being so supportive of it. Like it's such a special project to
Yeah.
have been involved in, and Charlotte's a legend. So like
Oh,
the fact that
isn't
she
she?
invited me on board, she's like the funniest person in the world too,
Yeah.
which is which is like,
Has she
I
ever
feel
done
just like
stand
lucky
up?
that she's my friend.
Yeah.
I feel like she should. I feel like she should.
Yeah.
She'd be pretty good at it, I think. Like I feel like every single Q&A she does is basically stand
How did you guys meet? How did you guys come to know each other and work together?
up. I think she contacted me. She probably emailed or something when after she had seen a film I worked on called The White Helmets,
Hmm.
which was playing in Toronto at that time, and I think she had a film in Toronto the same year. And so she reached out to me, and it just shows like sort of what an incredible person she is to connect like this movie about like first responders in Syria documentary, and then her world of what she's doing, and like that I would be worth speaking to, and she just asked if I ever wanted to collaborate, and I was like, absolutely, are you kidding? Like I saw her short and just the way she was too, and so that's how we met.
That's amazing. I love that kind of really natural reaction that she's had to your music and to your work. That's it's connected with her.
Yeah, I mean, I feel really lucky that I think that a lot of the filmmakers that am lucky enough to work with have sort of become friends because we've done short films together, and we've sort of like grown up like over time together, and like sort of like been at various stages, but always just like it's been really collaborative and sort of like open and stuff like that. And I think it's important that you have a kinship with the people you work with, because I may not be the right person for every job, but like with the people that I do connect with, we have,
Yeah.
sorry, we have a great way of communicating, and so I think that like, but that's mostly down to I think the directors and them having you know a way to see that, and I'm just fortunate to be along on the ride.
That's a really healthy way to look at it, though, to understand and appreciate when it's maybe not the right project for you, as well as it being one that you really want to work on.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been in places before where I've sort of been like, are you sure that like, or like let's bring in help, because like I'd love to sort of like expand my horizon, and like, like let's tap into this, and like mind that person's mind for ideas, because that's really rich, and then that becomes a collaboration, and then like I'm a big fan of like many brains
Yeah.
together versus
It
just one brain, you know?
yeah, yeah. No one wants a dictatorship in filmmaking. No.
Yeah, yeah.
What was your do you mind me asking just about your kind of journey into to composing for film and TV, really?
Yeah. So I'm half Swedish, half Polish. And my dad's Swedish, my mom's Polish. And so because of my dad's job, I grew up in Malaysia. So I grew up in Kuala Lumpur. I was there from the age of 8 to 18. My dad worked for IKEA, so it's like the most stereotypical Swedish thing in the world. But that's so where I grew up. And
Yeah.
so, I was in like weird, like I was in a gamelan when I was a kid. And,
Wow.
yeah, that was crazy. But, you just think it's normal. But then it's just where you are in the world, it's just a bit different. And I was in like a punk band, and we played the underground scene there. And it was like, but I was just thinking to myself actually recently that like it's weird because they couldn't do like cigarette advertising because of some law that they had there. So a lot of the music CD shops would be sponsored by like cigarette companies. And so you'd walk into these like shops, and it's this like super subconscious advertising to all the children who are buying records, I guess. But I remember going to the CD shop, so I like, and the access that we had to a lot of the like Western music was, you know, it was mostly like Backstreet Boys and stuff like that. So you had to like go through other channels to like
Yeah.
find the. But anyway, yeah. So um, they, I basically was asked like, what do you want to do when you grow up in school? And I, by a counselor, and I said that I wanted to probably do music because I had seen some role model that like I was like, oh, that person's really cool. So like I'm gonna copy what they do. And they went to Berklee College of Music, so I applied to just one school, and fortunately I got in.
Yes.
And so I studied in Boston, which was amazing. And
Wow.
I met my now wife there. We got together, and then she graduated a year before me, so she came to London to do a master's, and so I followed her across the Atlantic for us to be closer to home. And and then I was like, there's a gap in my not technical knowledge. Like I studied composition and all that side of things, but so I applied to a music studio, and I was lucky to get in because I think I came at it from a slightly different side than like if you were an engineer and you know you get another engineering CV, which you know
Yeah.
for people it's difficult. But I think that's why you know it piqued the interest of the studio manager, and so I got in there, and then after 2 years, the head engineer quit and moved on to another job. So I became the de facto engineer of this place, and I didn't know anything. I was just making it up as I went along. Basically, it's the story of my life. And
Me
I'd be
too,
like,
Patrick.
I'd be googling, yeah, I'd be googling like, how do you record so and so instrument, and they're in the live room over there, and like obviously I you know kept that very hush hush, but yeah, and one day someone walked in, a guy named Orlando von Einsiedel, which is he's a fantastic documentary filmmaker, and he brought a film
Yeah.
called Skatistan,
Hmm.
which later went on to go into Sundance. And you know, I was supposed to do day one, I was supposed to do the sound design. Day two, I was supposed to do the mix. So you know, that was my job on that gig. And so we did the sound design, and then he went home, and I was like, the film was on my system, and I was thinking, we talked about how he didn't, you know, didn't quite have it worked out with the music on the music side of things. So I was like, I'm going to score the opening of the film. So I stayed late that night and scored the opening of the film. And then when he came in the next morning, I
Oh
was sitting there with
man.
coffee, and I was like, "Hey, I scored the opening of the film. Do you want to see what I've done?" And thankfully, he liked it, and we've been working on many films since then. The next film he went on to do was, it started off as a small film. He's like, "I'm doing a film in Congo, Eastern Congo, DRC," and uh, and it turned out to be like become a bigger film. Leonardo DiCaprio came on board, and it sort of like, yeah, it went on to be nominated for an Oscar. So
What film was
Orlando's
that?
done fantastically well, and it's called Virunga,
Yeah.
and it's a great film, and I'm just really thankful that Orlando kept inviting me back, and we just finished another thing just like a month ago or so,
Oh
or two
wow.
months ago.
But it's
So
wonderful
that's,
to, I
sorry,
think,
long story. That's
no,
my
it's a
journey.
great story. It's a great story. And it's, listen, I think it's really lovely as well because, like, you know, for me as well, kind of coming through what I've done as well, I think having an appreciation and getting the opportunity to work in different departments along the way, you know, it gives you a really wonderful insight into all the different jobs that people do, how much work's involved, what the different areas do as well. And it is really extraordinary when you look back on the films that you've worked on in different, you know, with different hats on sort of thing. And it's such a varied and wonderful mix of things that you had different things, and whether it's kind of animation on things like Brave or My Week with Marlin or Rise the Planet of the Apes or Thor, all that kind of stuff. You know, there's kind of, I guess I'm citing those ones just because people will kind of know those titles, but it just gives an insight into the variety of things that you've worked on in different guises. But all of that feeds into you. You know, it's kind of, it's like little tools that you have with you along the way that you could choose to use or not use, or you know, it's kind of, you learn things along the way that you want to keep with you, and other things that you want to recycle, disperse of, whatever sort of thing. It's amazing when you look back on this.
Yeah, no, it's like such a rich pool of stuff that you don't even know that you know, kind of thing. And like
Yeah.
it gives you an appreciation for how difficult it is to make a great film in the first place, and like how, you know, the editing, the cinematography, the acting, like absolutely everything, the directing. And but then like also you'll, yeah, like you said, like for example, My Week with Marilyn, yeah, you're in a room, and then like in the corner are the scores for like from Conrad Pope's score for that film, which, and he's like longtime orchestrator for John Williams. So you're like, can I take a peek at the scores for 5 minutes? And then just those 5 minutes, it's just like, you
Gold.
know, and
Yeah.
like, yeah, and then it's like, okay, cool, I'll keep that in my back pocket for a few years, you know, and like, yeah, you're so right.
Oh. Well, let's get back to Scrapper because oh, I had such a happy, beautiful time chatting to Charlotte about this film. After that initial kind of, her reaching out to you, how did she introduce the film to you? Because it was really interesting as well from hearing from her kind of how the film, the original, what it started off as was, she says it was supposed to be a grandma and her grandson on a kind of uh on a road trip or something. I think she said, but it's
Mm-hmm.
extraordinary to think about kind of where something starts and through conversation, listening, collaboration, people you trust having an opinion, it shifts, and also listening, it kind of can shift as well. But what was her introduction to this project for you in terms of what did she tell
Well,
you?
yeah, so I think Charlotte's like a bit careful with scripts. Like she likes to like hold that close for a while, and I totally appreciate that. Like,
Yeah.
um, and so she sent me like an early script of it, and I read it, and I thought this is brilliant. This is just, now you're just sort of like workshopping it to like, like chisel it down to make it like squeaky clean. But
Yeah.
then like it's like quiet for a bit, and then quiet for a bit, and then she's like, "We've changed the movie completely," and I was like, "Okay, cool, wicked, awesome." It was already great, so like I'm excited. But then she didn't send me that script um, for ages, and like I kept being like, "Hey, so how's the script going?" Um, but I think it's like a reflection of, like you say, like where someone's at in their life, and I think it's important that the work that you do, or it's sort of inevitable that the work that you
Yeah.
do is reflective of like where you're at. And I heard the podcast that you had with Charlene, and it was great, and she talks a little bit about like sort of like that her and I had gone through some difficult times at the same time,
Yeah.
and like so we would meet up quite a lot and talk about sort of like, you know uh, difficult stuff and grief and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and things that were like are very real things
Mm-hmm.
that like everyone on the planet has gone through. But if you're not in that zone exactly at that moment, then it's hard to like be on the same wavelength. But we were in the same wavelength that time when we talked a lot and stuff. So we talked a lot about that sort of stuff, just about like more yeah, life stuff, and
Yeah.
rather than talking about specifically filmmaking. And but I think that it's such an essential part of the filmmaking, because then when you start to like make the decisions as to the instrumentation or this and that, then it becomes informed by all of that stuff that you've been doing work for longer than you think, kind of thing, and I think just through conversations. And yeah, so like I think she gives so much freedom, and so but she knows what she wants, and she
Mm.
challenges you. um and I have good examples of like how she challenges you but also leaves you alone and stuff like that, and it's like, yeah, she's amazing, she's the best.
I think that that's why the film is connecting so well with people, because it's coming from a place of genuine emotion, in terms of all of you have not been scared to put your experiences in this film in some way, shape, or form. And I think that that's one of the many reasons why it's really connecting with people, because it feels so, I don't know, you can connect to it in a way. Um, and it's not done through any manipulative way at all. It's just done in a kind of really beautiful, colorful way, really, through comedy and through performance. And yeah, I think that that for me is kind of I kind of where you're kind of immediately drawn to these characters, and can resonate with their reactions, their emotions, their, their lack of, or the not being able to face the reality of things, um so yeah, I hope you take that as a compliment, but yeah, I think that
No,
that's a big thing for
massively,
me.
yeah. That's absolutely like it's like disarming almost that there is color and comedy and like all that stuff, and then you like have license to access those places because it's yeah, it's a bit disarming and kind of like not something you've always seen before, and like
Mm,
it feels quite real, even though it's fantastical in many
yeah.
ways. It's strange how that works, but it does. And I think
was
Charlotte just did such an amazing job.
was that something that you talked about though, in terms of with the score, of having these weighty themes, with grief, and and also that kind of that reconciliation between a daughter and her father, he's been missing for years and stuff. That's not an easy journey for anyone to take on both sides. But were those conversations that you had about with the score, of almost kind of like trying to not lean too much into that emotionally, in terms of, so that you're not kind of leading the audience into feeling a certain way? It had to be its own thing, because I feel like it doesn't kind of, it's not, it fits so beautifully, like I think almost like what you say, with the kind of color and the comedy, and it's almost the support of that rather than being a support of the kind of the grief and that sort of side of things. Does that make sense? Sorry, that's a weird
Yeah,
question.
no, you're got it spot on. I'm so glad that comes across because I think that like we always really wanted it to be from the perspective of Georgie, and Georgie's a 12-year-old girl, and
Yeah.
like it's it's that thing of like kids always see things from you know a different place. I think they can always see the lightness in things, and there's a
Mm.
positivity and an inherent sort of curiosity and beauty to how they are and think. And so, like, I think if we could always be true to that and have it be from the perspective of Georgie, then it's we're allowed to have grief, we're allowed to have worry, concern, all the dark stuff, but it's always sort of like framed around um, the place of that first, and
Yeah.
like I think also like in terms of like instrumentation choices, like she builds this giant tower of metal, which is like a physical representation of the grief that she's going through and how she's working through that in her head. So I was like, we need to tap into that and
Mm.
access that. And so I went into the studio with a fantastic percussionist named Paul Clarvis, and we I sent Paul a photo of the tower, and I was like, it needs to sound like that. So he brought all this piece of scrap metal and old bicycle tires and like whatever chains.
Awesome.
So so we just spent half a day like throwing chains across the studio and like banging on stuff. And but so that's like cool because it's in the film, but it's also like an immediate way to access Georgie's grief. And so like but without being too overt, maybe, because there's something about percussion instruments that sort of like leaves more space to breathe a little bit, I
Yeah.
think sometimes. And so, but that coupled with like, woodwinds and other sort of like weird metallic instruments that you can't necessarily put your finger on what they are, but they hopefully that disarms you and lets you just feel it and it washes over you rather than you're like, oh, that's a string or that's whatever. Then like this flurry of thoughts that is going through a 12-year-old's mind where she can't quite make sense of things and they're sort of like whirling around her head, but it's beautiful and warm at the
Mm.
same time. And anyway, that's what I tried to do.
Did Was there, in terms of the script, once you got that kind of that adaptation of the script, was there, how does it work with Charlotte in terms of knowing a how much music you need to create and where that's going to fit? Was that in the script at all? Was that something that kind of, was worked through, when you were, while she was filming, or what was the, yeah.
I think that she had songs in her mind that were, I think, I'm pretty sure written into the script, at least a
Yeah.
couple of them, not many. but I think in terms of scoring, like when we work with on Charlotte's films in general, we try to keep music quite minimal,
Yeah.
and we try to keep it so that it's a storytelling device. Like there's a purpose for it being there when it comes in. I mean, everybody does that, of course, but like I think generally we keep it quite sparse, and so there's not loads of music in the film, but when it
Yeah.
is there, I think it's sort of you feel it, or it sneaks up on you at least. And I think most of that happened probably in conversations when they were starting to do an assembly. So we'd be chatting about things and like things we like and all this kind of stuff, but actual like getting to work was probably when I was like, oh, here's like a little sequence, and then I'd write something and it's like, oh, that's crap. Start again. Like not quite, but you know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it would be me. It could be me saying that, or it could be Charlotte being like, oh, like this, but don't like that. But yeah, it was very organic, and although there's not much music in the film, it was one of the hardest films I've had to score
Was
because
it?
tonally, yeah, because tonally trying to like straddle those lines is not so easy. I feel like one could have gone in other directions quite easily, and
Yeah.
I wanted it to feel true and honest and everything, and you know, hopefully, like we could make it a bit weird too.
Yeah. Did how much then did like the performances and the relationships between those characters inform stuff like Lola on her own, or Georgie and Ali, or Georgie and her dad, in terms of, because those, I mean, Alan and Lola and Harrison. I mean, the casting in the film is fantastic, but
Amazing,
particularly
yeah.
those three characters and the relationships they subsequently have with each other are just really quite phenomenal, and they make me smile even just thinking about them. And so I wondered whether they informed anything specifically for you, whether that be, yeah, melody, sound, yeah, all of that really.
Yeah, 100%. Like that was everything. So like, um, there was a, so I started like, you know, trying to find my way into the film and just started working on like a palette and everything like that. But like, I think as a composer, you come in later, so like you don't know the film as well as the filmmakers do yet. It takes a minute,
Yeah.
and so like I always felt like there's a scene towards the end of the film where you hear Georgie listening to a voice note that she's not supposed to hear, but it's to her dad, talking about her from her mom and
Yeah.
who's passed away. And so I felt like if I could unlock what that feels like what that relationship is between Georgie and her mom, then I feel like I'm unlocking also what her relationship is with her dad, and and then so and what she's missing and what she wants, you know. And so I felt like it took a little while to find it, but
Yeah.
then when I sent that to Charlotte and she liked it, then I was like, okay, now we're sailing. You know, we're going, and I understand better what it is. And yeah,
That's so interesting, just in terms of that idea of there's a key almost to unlock it in a way, and go, okay, we've got it, let's go in and
hmm
see where we can
I
go with
think
it,
that's
stuff.
to
Yeah.
every film. I really think
Mm.
it is like in all departments probably because it's so like abstract first,
Yeah.
and then you have to make it something tangible.
Yeah.
And if you can make the cerebral part match the actual thing, the
Yeah.
instinctive thing, that's hard.
It's funny because I was just trying to find my notes there on, what the when I'm, when you're watching it, you try and, well, not to be lost, to take away the moment of being in the film, but trying to scroll down some notes whilst you're watching, sort of thing. And the cue over answer message was one that I wrote down, sort of thing. It was just kind of like literally like a sucker punch. But then also the one of the things that I wrote down was the cue over the dancing scene in the wasteland, and the build of that for me almost reflected the warmth and growth of their relationship in a way. I love
Yeah,
that cue as well.
thank you. That was like a moment when they really connect. there, and they're really, so it's like you're allowed to have that release, I think, and just it's just joyous, and the way it's shot as well, it's so great. But there's
Yeah.
interesting, like that voice note part you were talking about, like there's Charlotte had the brilliant idea, and she really pushed me on this, that in the tower room scenes that come before,
Yeah.
in the rooms where she's filming, like she's like, can we not see some of the voice note stuff into the music, make it part of the music, but have it be like a rhythmic aspect, um, in
Oh
those
wow.
scenes as like a foreshadowing, and also like as if we're being in her head. It's like she hasn't heard it yet, but it's like, so when we arrive at that scene, it's like you've heard it even though you haven't. But and I was like, how are we gonna do that? And it took me forever because I needed to like arrive at the same place of thinking as Charlotte was telling me, but she was so right. And I was like, yes, you're right, but we need to make it so that it's like unintelligible. It needs to have the feeling of all of that stuff. And so it's like we've heard it, but we can't hear the words, so that it can be identified as music. But then it becomes this like loop. You hear it once, you're like, what is that? Twice, what is that? But then three times, and there's this psychoacoustic effect of like you hear the pulse of it,
Yeah.
and it becomes like, again, linked to her grief and all of that stuff. And then so when you do arrive at the end, you're like, it's new, but you've heard it already three times, but you just
Yeah.
didn't realize.
That line where she says, I didn't think that I needed you. Oh, I
Yeah,
mean,
that's the killer. Yeah.
oh my God. And then, but then you have
Yeah.
that. I mean, Lola's performance, I talked about this with Charlotte, is just, I mean, what a find, this kind of little firecracker. She's extraordinary. The way she's able to kind of, her comedic timing is genius, when they're trying to steal the bikes and they're kind of trying to defer. And she's like, do you want me to be honest? When they're saying, when, this, when they're talking about we were actually doing a survey on
Yeah,
about
yeah.
house. It's just like, and then things like, who said you could use the washing machine? Just kind of her
Yeah.
comedic timing is just and then I need someone. And it's like, oh God, she's just got the gravitas on those two sides. Not everybody can do that in adults. Do you know what I mean? In terms of hit that emotional kind of heart without overplaying it. And then also the timing on that comedy. And this little girl just nails it.
Mm. Yeah, it's incredible. And it's like, and she's amazing in real life too, but like to do that on set in an improvisational like
Yeah.
landscape or environment with
Mm-hmm.
like heavy hitting actors around you, and like not being faced with, I mean, she's a kid obviously, so that helps, but like, but also testament to Charlotte, her vision, the casting, and her, like how she gave them space, and how she could see the
Absolutely.
film. She could see the whole film
Yeah.
as she was doing it. And I notice it in like little things too, because I've seen the movie like 1,000 times, right? But like, yeah, yeah. And it's one of those, like, it's not always the case, but it's one of those films that the more you watch it, the more you love it.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
and that's special.
She's terrible at taking compliments, Charlotte. I tried to give I tried to give her a few when we were doing the interview. She wasn't having any of it because that was one of the things I said to her,
Yeah.
is that you created a safe space for this, for these young people to do and give the performances they gave. If they weren't in an environment that they felt safe in, supported, you wouldn't have got that out of them. So it's down to, it's down to you and your team to that you provided that. She wasn't having any of that. She's just kind of
She
like,
deflects those straight away. Yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. Um, just with regards to the kind of, there are a few needle drops in there as well, and is that something you have to be aware of in terms of, or not? Whether because I know that there was with the streets track, it was, there was a hope that they could get that, and she also talked about Dry Your Eyes, Mate, and this weird little scene that was nearly in the film with the spiders that then didn't make it in, sort of thing. I mean, I'm not sure if that was even, I want to see that as a short film though, because that just sounds brilliant.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, do you kind of, do you bear that sonically those songs in mind in terms of where they sit and where and when your scores around it?
Yes, massively, because on this one, normally it depends, like, because sometimes you need respite from score, I think, in order to like change the dynamics of the oral landscape of a film. So it can be super good. But sometimes, I'm not talking about technical things like key relationships
Yeah.
and going in and out, but like on this one, because the opening of the film was recut quite a few times, like I actually scored the opening at one point in a different way, and it was working good, but this is so much better how they have it now. And like if you come in strong with the streets track, it's like, wow, that's like a hell of a track to open it strong, bold. Like, how am I gonna track music cue number 2? Like, how's that
Yeah.
gonna like hold up again? Like they're gonna be like, you should stick to the songs, like, but
No.
it's, but I think that we found the balance. I think ultimately by sort of like really playing with the scale of things
Yeah.
there and how long we take to arrive at what that language is, and
Yeah.
that's a real conversation that we had, and a lot of back and forth. So on this one, that was a big consideration, and the end track, which is amazing. Like I played around with that actually in order to make it flow out of my cue. So I had quite a lot of sort of input on that one in order to and because there was something
Amazing.
in there, and I was like, can you send me the raw track? And I was like, how about this instead? And did like a little thing, and they're like, yeah, that's wicked, great. So
Amazing.
that was cool and unusual actually.
Yeah. Um, what's next? What are you working on next that you can tell us
I've
about?
got
A lot of the time it's like,
eh.
well,
Well, I recently I just finished a a a TV series on Netflix called The Heart of Invictus, which was
oh yeah.
a blast. Um, um, and I did a movie called The Boogeyman as well, just recently, which was in cinemas in June. But I um, now have, with the same director as Invictus, Orlando, again, he asked me if I wanted to work on a couple of projects which he has coming up soon. And and the amazing thing about Orlando is he sends like the ideas and pictures and like stuff way early, so I can start to like think
Yeah.
about it, but without the pressure of like having to dive in straight. And
Yeah.
I think that's the sort of most fertile creative ground, is when there's not too much pressure and you
Yeah.
can really be like, but because I have like a slight moment of time here, I'm like, maybe I should start diving into my second solo album,
Yeah.
which I'm
For
very
you.
excited about. And yeah, because like I've been working on a lot of stuff recently and been very busy. And I just had a kid. She's like 1,
Oh,
and so like I
congratulations.
thank you. And so there's like a lot of like I, it'd be nice to do something where like I can just like run it sort of like at
Yeah.
my own pace
Yeah.
and sort of like explore that. I don't know. It's an itch that comes up every few years that that but I mean, I love scoring films. It's my number one and my favorite thing. But I've got all these voice memos on my phone, like hundreds of them. So I'm just going through them and saying, no, crap, 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 crap. Ah, interesting. There's like 2 bars in there. Crap, 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 crap. Ah, 1 bar. Okay, and then I'll narrow that down to like 50, and then I want to get that down to like 10, and then we'll
Then you got an
see how it
album.
goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean,
Oh,
they're just like me singing into a phone, so it needs to be like reproduced a
got to
bit.
start
But
somewhere. They all
yeah,
start with
but
some kind of inspiration or, yeah,
that's me. That's what I'm up to next. So
brilliant. Oh, I look forward to it, Patrick. I also look forward to you working with Charlotte again, and whether that's her basketball movie or her western, or I mean, I was like, I'll watch anything she makes, to be honest. So yeah,
or her next Born Ultimatum movie, or yeah,
exactly. Oh my
yeah,
God, she would be so great at that. So good. Oh,
yeah.
listen, thank you
With
so much for
spiders,
your,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. But Born Ultimate with spiders, yeah, and horses, branded. But yeah, I'm there. Thank you for your time and congratulations again. It's great to chat to you and it's great to meet you as well. Thank you so much.
You too. Thank you so much. See
All
you later.
right, take care. Have a good one. Bye.